The alien girl lay on the ground, her body weak and thin. Dust clung to her skin, and her stomach growled with an empty cry that no one cared to hear. Around her, the others walked past without mercy. Some even laughed as she tried to crawl forward, her hands shaking as if they could barely carry her weight. She had not eaten for days. Every step she tried to take ended with her falling back into the dirt. Her lips were dry, her eyes hollow. She reached out once toward a stall of food, but the shopkeeper slapped her hand away and shouted that she was not worth even a scrap. The crowd laughed, the sound sharp and cruel, cutting deeper than hunger ever could. To them, she was nothing, a failure, a burden. She had been cast out by her own people, left to starve on the street. Children threw stones at her, calling her worthless. Merchants kicked dust at her face whenever she came near. And yet, she did not fight back. She was too weak, too broken. Her body trembled like a dying flame. She remembered when she was small, and had dreams when she thought her people cared for her. But now those memories felt like lies. Day after day, she had been reduced to crawling in the dirt, hoping for even a crumb, watching others eat while she wasted away. The sky above was bright and wide, yet it gave her no comfort. The sun burned her skin. The ground beneath her felt like fire. She wondered if this was how she would die, with no name, no home, no one to care. A group of aliens walked by, carrying baskets of fruit. She stretched out her hand again, her voice barely more than a whisper, asking for something, anything. Instead of helping, they pointed at her and laughed. One of them dropped a peel in front of her and mocked her to eat that instead. She lowered her eyes, too ashamed to resist, too desperate to pretend she still had dignity. Her hands shook as she reached for the peel. But even then, one of the passers-by stomped his foot on it, grinding it into the dirt so she could not eat it. The crowd howled with laughter again. She closed her eyes, wishing she could vanish, wishing she could disappear into the dust where no one would see her pain. The day dragged on. Hours passed like chains. Hunger made her dizzy, the world spinning around her. Her bones ached, her skin clung tightly to her frame. She could not even cry anymore. Her tears had dried days ago. At the corner of the street, she collapsed again. Her knees scraped against stone, her arms trembling under her thin weight. She thought of giving up, of letting the dirt claim her. At last, no one would notice. No one would stop their laughter. To them, her death would be just another joke. The cruel truth pressed heavy on her. She was alone. No family, no friends, no one who wanted her to live. The people who once shared her blood now turned their backs as if she never existed. The crowd's laughter still rang in her ears, growing sharper each time she fell. As she lay there, too weak to move, a shadow passed over her. For a moment, she thought it was another cruel stranger coming to mock her again. She did not bother to lift her head. What difference would it make? They all hated her, every single one of them. But this shadow did not move away. It lingered, silent, steady. She could feel eyes on her, watching not with amusement, not with cruelty, but with something different, something she had not seen in a long time. Still, she did not look up. She had learned not to hope. Hope only hurt worse when it was crushed. And yet, even in her weakness, even in her despair, she felt her heart beat faster. The laughter of the crowd began to fade. Whispers grew instead, voices unsure, nervous. The shadow shifted, larger now, firm against the sunlight. Slowly, she opened her eyes, blinking against the glare. There he stood, a human. His clothes were plain, his face calm, but his eyes were sharp, filled with a fire that silenced the voices around him. The alien girl froze, unsure what to think. Humans were rare in this place, strangers to her people, feared by many. Why was he here, standing over her, while others mocked and laughed. He did not join their laughter. He did not turn away. He simply stood there, watching her with an expression she could not understand. Her heart pounded harder, fear mixing with confusion. Who was this human, and why was he looking at her like that? The crowd whispered louder, some daring to laugh again, though their voices were weaker now. The human did not move, but the weight of his presence pressed against every cruel voice around her. The girl lowered her head again, certain he would leave like all the others. No one had ever stayed before. No one had ever cared. But this time, something was different. This human was not laughing, and he was not leaving. Asterisk. The crowd's laughter slowly faded when the human stepped closer. His boots pressed into the dirt with a steady sound, and his shadow stretched over the broken alien girl. For the first time in days, she felt cold shade against her skin instead of the burning sun. The people around her grew restless. Some muttered insults, some mocked him for wasting time on her, but their voices no longer carried the same strength. The human's presence had changed the air, heavy and tense. He stood tall, calm, his eyes fixed only on her. She dared to look up, just for a moment. His face was not cruel like the others. There was no smirk, no sneer. Instead, his eyes carried something she could not name, something fierce, yet strangely gentle. It frightened her more than the laughter of her people because she did not know what it meant. Why was he watching her? Why did he not turn away? A child in the crowd laughed and pointed at her thin arms, but the sound stopped when the human glanced. In that direction, just one look, and the child lowered his hand. The human's eyes carried weight like iron, and no one wanted to test him. He knelt beside her. The crowd gasped as if it were unthinkable for anyone to lower themselves to her. Level, his hand rested on his knee, and his voice was quiet when he spoke. "Can you hear me?" he asked. The alien girl trembled. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to answer, but her throat was too dry, too broken from days of silence. She could only nod weakly, her head shaking with the effort. The human looked at her for a long moment. Then, with slow care, he reached into a small bag at his side. The crowd leaned forward, expecting him to strike her, expecting him to mock her. Instead, he pulled out a piece of bread and held it toward her. The smell reached her nose, warm and rich. Her body screamed with hunger. Yet she froze. It had to be a trick. No one had ever offered her food. Every time she reached out before, she had been slapped, kicked, or mocked. Her fingers twitched, but she could not move. Her mind screamed at her to grab it, yet her heart told her this was another cruel game. The human's hand stayed steady. He did not pull the bread back. He did not laugh. He simply waited. The crowd erupted in jeers. Why waste food on her? One shouted, "She's dirt," nothing more. Another yelled. But the human did not look at them. His eyes stayed on her, patient, unshaken. Finally, her hand crept forward. She touched the edge of the bread, still unsure, still waiting for the cruel strike that always came. But the strike never came. The bread did not vanish. His hand did not move. Her heart beat faster as she pulled it closer. Her teeth sank into it, and the taste exploded across her tongue. Warmth, life, strength. It was more than food. It was survival. Tears stung her eyes, though no sound left her throat. The human watched silently as she ate. Piece by piece, desperate, yet afraid it would disappear. For the first time in days, she felt something fill the hollow pit inside her. The crowd grew louder, angry now. "This is madness," one shouted. "Humans should know better than to touch trash like her." Another cried. Some even spat on the ground in disgust. The human finally turned his head. His eyes swept over them, cold and sharp. The jeers faltered. The whispers turned uneasy. For a moment, the entire street seemed to shrink under his gaze. When he looked back at her, his expression softened again. "You are not dirt," he said firmly, his voice carrying across the silence. The words hit her harder than the bread. She stared at him, shocked. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever said she was anything more than worthless. Her hands trembled as she clutched the last piece of bread. She wanted to believe him, but the scars of her past weighed. Heavy, could he truly mean it? The crowd could not stay silent. Their voices rose again, sharper now. "Leave her. Let her rot," they demanded. "She deserves nothing but death." The human stood. His shadow grew taller over her once more. He looked at the crowd, and this time his voice thundered with, "Steal, you laughed while she starved. You mocked her pain. But I will not stand by." The crowd recoiled. None had expected him to challenge them so openly. His words cut through their cruelty like a blade, leaving them uncertain. Afraid to speak, the alien girl stared at him, her heart racing. Who was this human, and why would he risk their hatred for her? He turned back to her and knelt again. His hand reached out, steady, waiting. "Come with me," he said quietly. Her breath caught. The words struck her like lightning. No one had ever invited her anywhere. No one had ever asked her to rise from the dirt. Her eyes darted to the crowd, then back to him. Fear battled hope inside her chest. Was this another lie, or was this the first true kindness she had ever known? The crowd hissed in anger, but they did not step forward. None dared face him. Her hand trembled. Her body shook, but slowly, painfully, she reached out toward him. And for the first time, someone did not. "Pull away." The human's hand closed gently around hers, and in that single touch, her world began to change. The alien girl's thin hand rested in the human's palm, trembling with fear. For so long, every hand she reached for had struck her, mocked her, or pushed her deeper into the dirt. Yet this hand was steady, strong, warm. She could not understand. Why? The crowd around them hissed and muttered. Some spat in disgust, some laughed in disbelief, but none dared step closer. The human's presence was like a wall of stone, unshaken by their voices, unbroken by their hatred. He looked at her. His eyes, firm but kind. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice quiet but carrying weight. "Come with me." Her breath caught. The words were impossible. No one had ever spoken them to her. Her own people had cast her out. Her neighbors had starved her. Strangers had laughed while she begged. And now, this human, a stranger in their world, was asking her to leave the dust behind. Her mind screamed that it was a trick. Hope was dangerous, more dangerous than hunger. Hunger hurt the body, but false. Hope destroyed the soul. She stared at his hand, at the strength in it, afraid to believe. The crowd shouted louder. "Do not take her. She is nothing. She will drag you down." Their voices were sharp, like knives thrown from every side. But the human did not even turn his head. His eyes stayed on her, she whispered, her voice broken. Why? It was the first sound she had made in days. Her throat was dry, her words fragile, but they reached him. He leaned closer so only she could hear. "No one deserves to be left in the dirt." Her chest tightened. The words cut through her fear. They sounded impossible, unreal, but the way he spoke made her believe he meant them. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to speak, to tell him she could not, to warn him she was worthless, that she would only slow him down. But her lips refused. To form the words, the human waited. His patience was strange, almost frightening. He did not rush her, did not pull her to her feet. He simply waited, his hand still open, his voice calm. Behind him, the crowd grew restless. "He will regret this," one snarled. "Humans are fools," another cried. Some began throwing small stones toward them, not daring to hit him directly, but close enough to show their anger. Still, he did not flinch. He shielded her with his body, standing firm like a wall between her and the hate. Her heart pounded. No one had ever stood for her before. No one had ever protected her. She shook her head weakly. I can't." Her voice cracked like glass. "Yes, you can," he answered, firm but gentle. "You are not weak. They only want you to believe it." Her eyes widened. His words were fire, burning away the chains that held her down. She had been told she was dirt, nothing, useless. But he spoke as if she was worth something, as if she still had a life beyond hunger and dust. She looked again at his hand. Her breath came fast, shallow. Could she do it? Could she take it? The crowd roared in anger. "She belongs to the dirt. Leave her." But the human's voice cut through theirs like thunder. "She belongs to no one but herself," he said. The aliens stepped back at his words. His defiance shook them. His strength silenced them. The girl's body trembled as she tried to rise. Her knees gave way, her arms shook, but the human's hand held hers tight, steadying her. She clung to him, half afraid, half desperate, her body weak but her heart beating like never before. She rose slowly, her legs unsteady, her frame thin and fragile. Gasps echoed from the crowd. To them, she was nothing but a starving beggar. Seeing her stand at the side of a human filled them with rage. "Look at her," one shouted. "She cannot even walk." But the human ignored them. He bent slightly, his arm sliding under hers to give her support. "You don't need to walk alone," he whispered. Her breath shuddered. The words hit her deeper than any kindness she had ever known. For the first time, she was not asked to prove her worth, not asked to carry her suffering alone. For the first time, someone was willing to share the weight. The world spun around her as she leaned against him. Her body was weak, but her spirit felt stronger with each heartbeat. She looked up at his face, searching for mockery, searching for cruelty. She found none. His expression was steady, calm, determined. Tears rolled down her cheeks, cutting lines through the dirt. She had no words, only the silent cry of someone who had been given a gift too great to name. The human did not speak again. He did not need to. His presence was enough. His strength was enough. As they began to move, the crowd parted. None dared block their way. Their voices fell into silence, their hatred swallowed by the heavy weight of his will. Every step the girl took beside him felt unreal, like a dream she would wake from at any moment. Yet his hand remained strong in hers, his arms steady around her. He did not let go. She had lived her life crawling in the dirt, laughed at, starved, forgotten. And now, a human had looked at her, had fed her, had invited her to rise. It was an offer she could not believe, but it was an offer she could not refuse. Her legs barely carried her, yet with the human's arm steady under hers, she did not fall. Each step felt strange, unreal, like she was walking through a dream she feared would break at any moment. The crowd still watched, their whispers sharp with anger, but none dared stop them. The human walked with calm strength, and the alien girl leaned into him, her body trembling, but her heart alive with a new fire. They left the noisy street and entered a quieter path. The sun was lower now, painting the ground in soft gold, but the girl did not see the beauty. Her eyes were locked on the human's hand, the same hand that had offered her food, the same hand that still held hers with a grip that promised she would not fall again. Her stomach growled loud, painful and desperate. She lowered her head in shame, afraid he might think her disgusting. Instead, he glanced at her with a faint, calm smile and led her toward a shaded corner where a small pack rested. The girl's breath caught when he knelt down and opened it. Inside, she saw more food, bread, dried fruit, even a flask of water. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head in disbelief. Such things were treasures to her, impossible treasures. He pulled out a piece of bread and held it to her. "Eat," he said simply. Her hands shook as she reached forward. She hesitated, still afraid it was a trick, still waiting for him to snatch it away like the others always had. But the bread stayed steady in his palm, waiting only for her. Her thin fingers closed around it. She raised it slowly to her mouth, her breath trembling, and then she bit into it. The taste filled her mouth, warm, soft, alive. Her chest heaved as tears blurred her eyes. She chewed quickly, afraid it would vanish if she took too long. She had not tasted real food in so long that it felt like a miracle. The human handed her the flask. She looked at him, hesitant again, but he only nodded. She raised it to her lips, and the water slid down her dry throat like cool rain. She gasped, coughing from the shock of it, then drank again, faster this time, until she felt strength return. To her chest, her body shook with relief. Her tears dripped into the dirt, but she did not stop eating. She devoured the bread, then the dried fruit he gave her, each bite filling her hollow frame, each swallow pushing back the shadow of death that had hovered over her for days. The human did not rush her. He sat quietly, watching her with calm eyes, letting her eat as much as she could. His face carried no judgment, no impatience, only quiet strength. For the first time in her life, she ate without someone mocking her, without someone tearing the food from her hands. For the first time, she felt like she was allowed to live. When she finally lowered her hands, crumbs clinging to her lips, she could not look at him. Her voice was soft, breaking, but she managed to whisper one word. "Why?" The human tilted his head. "Because you deserve to eat," he said. "Because no one should be left to starve while others laugh." Her chest tightened. She had no answer. Her people had told her she was worthless. The world had shown her only cruelty. And yet, this human, who owed her nothing, spoke to her as if she mattered. She lowered her head, ashamed of the tears that would not stop. Her voice trembled. I am nothing." The human leaned forward, his voice firm. "You are not nothing. They want you to believe that, but they are wrong." His words struck her harder than hunger ever had. Gosh. She shook her head weakly, unable to believe him, but also unable to forget what he said. The truth was too heavy, too strange. But it burned inside her like a new fire. As she sat there, her stomach no longer empty, the whispers of the crowd returned. They had followed, watching from a distance, their eyes filled with rage. "She does not deserve it," one hissed. "He shames us all," another muttered. The human ignored them. His focus stayed only on her. He tore another piece of bread and placed it in her hand. "Eat until you are strong again," he said. Her hands shook as she clutched it. She felt fear pressing against her chest, fear that the crowd would drag her away, fear that this moment of kindness would vanish. But the human's calm presence kept her steady. His shadow still covered her. His strength still shielded her as she ate. She felt something return, something she thought had died long ago. Hope. It was small, fragile, but it lived inside her now. For the first time in days, she did not think about dying. She thought about living. The human poured a little water into his palm and offered it for her to wash her face. She hesitated, then dipped her fingers in, wiping the dirt from her cheeks. The cool touch made her feel almost human again, almost alive. The crowd still muttered in anger, but their voices were distant now. What mattered was the food in her hands, the water on her skin, and the human who had given them without asking anything in return. Her heart raced as she looked at him. He had fed her, given her water, and shielded her from cruelty. No one had ever done this for her. Her voice broke again, softer than before. "Who are you?" He looked at her, his eyes steady. "A friend," he said simply. The words struck her. Like lightning? A friend? She had no memory of such a thing. The crowd hissed louder, furious at what they saw. But the human did not rise, did not flinch. He stayed beside her, calm as stone. And in that quiet corner, with bread in her hands and hope in her heart, the girl who once lay in the dirt began to feel alive again. The bread was gone, the water flask nearly empty, and the alien girl sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. Her face was no longer hidden in the dirt, and her chest rose with a strength she had not felt in days. The human had given her food, given her water, and most of all, given her dignity. But the crowd that had once laughed at her now burned with anger. They had enjoyed mocking her when she crawled in the dust, but watching her rise with the help of a human made their blood boil. Whispers turned into shouts. "He dishonors us," one voice cried. "She is filth. She deserves nothing." Another roared. The people who once found her suffering amusing now spat with rage. The human rose to his feet, his hands still resting on her shoulder, calm but steady. His eyes swept across the angry crowd. He did not raise his voice, yet his silence carried weight, heavier than their insults. Still, the mob grew bolder. A merchant stepped forward, his face twisted with hatred. "Why waste food on her? She is cursed. She should have been left to die." His words carried venom, and others shouted in agreement. The girl trembled, clutching her thin arms to her chest. She wanted to shrink back, to disappear, but the human's hand stayed firm on her shoulder. She felt the steady strength in his touch, like a shield between her and their cruelty. The human finally spoke. His voice was calm but sharp as steel. "You laughed while she starved. You mocked her pain. Tell me, what does that make you?" The crowd froze. None expected him to throw their cruelty back at them. Their jeers faltered, but pride forced them to keep shouting. "She is nothing. She will never be more than dirt." The human's eyes narrowed. "You fear her," he said. "That is why you treat her like nothing, because you cannot stand to see someone rise after you tried to crush them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. His words struck deep, too close to the truth. Many lowered their eyes, but others grew more furious. A stone flew through the air, landing near the girl's feet. She flinched, her body shaking, but the human stepped in front of her, his shadow covering her once more. His eyes locked on the one who had thrown it, and the cowards stepped back at once. The mob grew louder, desperate to regain their courage. "Leave her," they demanded. "She is cursed. She will bring shame to you." But the human did not move. His voice thundered now, no longer quiet. "I will not leave her. You can shout, you can curse, but you will not take her life." Again, the girl's heart pounded in her chest. She had never heard anyone speak for her like this, never seen anyone stand against so many for her sake. She wanted to speak, to tell him to stop, to warn him of the danger. But her voice refused to come. The crowd's rage boiled hotter. Some stepped forward, their fists clenched, their eyes full of hate. But the human stance was unshaken, his presence like a wall. He placed himself between them and the girl, daring them to take another step. "You call her dirt," he said, his voice echoing across the street. "But I see more courage in her than in all of you. She has suffered hunger and cruelty, yet she still lives. That is strength. That is worth more than all your jeers." The crowd wavered. Their anger was loud, but their fear was louder. Few dared meet his eyes. Those who had once laughed now shifted uneasily, as if ashamed. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with tears. No one had ever spoken of her like that. No one had ever said she was strong. She had believed she was nothing but his words. Planted a seed deep inside her, a seed of something new. Yet the danger had not passed. The mob still lingered, their rage simmering. A voice shouted from the back, "He thinks he can change her, but he will regret it." Another cried, "Humans do not belong here, leave before it is too late." The human's jaw tightened. He bent slightly, his hand brushing against hers, his voice lowering so only she could hear. "Do not be afraid. They will not touch you while I stand here." Her chest heaved with silent sobs. She could not understand him, could not understand why he fought for her. But she clung to his presence like a drowning soul clings to air. The crowd began to thin. Their courage broken, their anger simmering into mutters. One by one they drifted away, but their hatred hung heavy in the air. When the last of them left, silence returned. The girl sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. Her stomach was no longer empty, but her heart felt heavier than ever. The human knelt beside her again, his expression calm, though his eyes still burned with quiet fire. "They cannot break you anymore," he said. "You are not alone." Her lips parted, but words failed her. She wanted to thank him, to tell him what it meant, but all she could do was lower her head and let the tears fall. He did not push her for words. He simply stayed beside her, steady and patient, his presence enough to drown out the echo of their cruelty. The girl knew the crowd would not forgive, that their rage would return stronger. But for the first time, she also knew she was not powerless, because now she had someone who stood for her, and the people who once laughed at her suffering now feared the fire in a human's eyes. The alien girl sat in silence, the sound of the crowd fading into memory. Only the human remained beside her, steady and unshaken, as if nothing in the world could move him. His calm strength flowed into her like warmth from a fire, reaching the cold places in her soul that she thought would never live again. Her stomach was no longer hollow. Her lips no longer cracked, and her trembling had slowed. The food had filled her body, but it was something deeper that had begun to change the way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her, the way he stood against 100 voices for her sake. For the first time in her life, she felt a spark inside her chest. It was small, fragile, but alive. She dared to lift her head. Her eyes, once empty, now carried a faint light. The human noticed, and though he said nothing, the corner of his mouth curved in the faintest smile. He rose to his feet and extended his hand again. "Stand with me," he said. Her heart pounded. Her body still felt weak, but his voice pulled. At her, slowly, she placed her hand in his, and with his strength guiding her, she stood. Her knees shook, but she did not fall. She wavered, but his hand steadied her, holding her upright. The moment felt unreal. She had been crawling in the dirt for so long that standing beside someone felt like a dream. The sun lit her face, and she blinked against its brightness. The world looked different from here, not from the ground, not from the dust, but from her own feet. The human studied her closely. "Do you see?" he asked. "You are stronger than they ever wanted you to believe." Her throat tightened. The words struck her deeply. She had believed she was nothing. She had believed her people's laughter. But now, standing on her feet with his hand in hers, she felt something shift. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was not as broken as they wanted her to be. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only tears of pain. They carried something else, the beginning of belief. The human released her hand slowly, letting her stand on her own. For a moment she wavered, but she did not fall. Her heart leaped at the small victory. The human nodded with quiet pride. You can stand, you can walk. They told you that you were weak, but they were wrong. Her lips parted, a whisper escaping. I can. The words felt strange, yet powerful. She could stand, she could walk. She was not nothing. The human gave her more bread, smaller pieces this time, and let her eat slowly. Each bite felt different now. She was no longer devouring food with desperation. She was savoring it, feeling strength return with every swallow. The girl's back straightened. Her shoulders no longer slumped. She looked around at the world with new eyes. The dust was still there. The cruel voices would surely return. But inside her, something had changed. For the first time, she did not feel like prey. The human watched her closely. His eyes were steady, yet there was a quiet fire in them, as if he saw more in her than she could see in herself. You lived when they wanted you dead, he said. That is strength, and now you will rise with it. Her heart pounded. She felt the truth in his words. She had survived hunger, cruelty, and shame. If she could endure that, maybe she could endure anything. But doubt lingered in her. She looked down at her thin arms, her fragile body. I am still weak, she whispered. The human shook his head. Strength is not only in the body, it is in the will. And you have more will than they will ever understand. His voice was calm, yet powerful. She wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to every word as the evening sun dipped lower. Painting the world in orange light, she felt a shift inside. She was no longer the girl who crawled in the dirt while others laughed. She was still fragile, still afraid, but she was standing now, eating, breathing, living. That was strength. The crowd had left, but their hatred had not vanished. She knew they would come again, that they would try to break her once more. The thought made her chest tighten, fear rising again. The human noticed. His voice was steady. They will come, but you will not face them alone. You have me now. Her eyes widened. The words wrapped around her like armor. Not alone. She had never heard those words before. Her breath trembled, but she nodded. She was not alone. The human placed a small blanket over her shoulders, shielding her from the cooling air. The simple act made her shiver with emotion. No one had ever cared if she was cold. No one had ever offered comfort. She looked at him, her lips forming silent words. Thank you. She could not say them, but he seemed to understand. Her heart was no longer empty. It carried a fragile, growing strength, a seed of hope planted by a stranger who had fed her, protected her, and lifted her from the dust. And as the stars began to appear in the sky, she realized something she had never dared before. She wanted to live, not just to survive another day, not just to crawl in the dirt begging for scraps, but to live, to walk, to stand, to fight for herself. The girl who had once been mocked, starved, and left to die had found a spark of strength within her. And the human who stood at her side was the reason that spark had begun to burn. The night was quiet, the stars glowing like silver eyes above. The alien girl sat beside the human, wrapped in the blanket he had given her. Her body was still weak, but her heart beat with a strange rhythm she had never felt before. It was the rhythm of life, of hope, of something more than survival. For hours she had sat in silence, afraid to speak, afraid that if she did, the fragile dream would shatter. Yet the human stayed with her, calm and steady, as if he had all the time in the world. His presence was like a shield, pushing away the memory of cruel voices and mocking laughter. Finally, he turned his eyes toward her. His voice was quiet but firm. You do not belong in the dirt. You do not belong among those who treat you like less than nothing. You deserve more. Her breath caught. The words felt impossible, yet they stirred something deep inside her. She lowered her eyes, ashamed of the scars on her body, ashamed of her thin frame. "I am not worthy," she whispered. "I am broken." The human shook his head. "You are not broken. You are alive. And that is enough." Her chest tightened, her heart struggling to accept the weight of his words. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever told her she deserved more than the scraps of life. She wanted to believe, but fear still clung to her. The human reached out and placed a hand gently on hers. His touch was warm, steady, unshaken. "Come with me," he said. Her eyes widened, her breath stilled. She looked at him in disbelief, her lips trembling. "With you?" "Yes," he answered. "Not as a beggar, not as dirt, not as a slave. With me as someone who matters." Her heart raced, fear and hope clashing inside her chest. The words were too great, too heavy. She wanted to accept them, yet part of her still feared it was a cruel trick. She remembered the laughter, the stones, the hunger. Could she really leave it all behind? The human leaned closer, his voice steady, each word carrying weight. "You have suffered enough. I am offering you a new life. A life where you are not mocked, not starved, not cast aside. But you must choose. Will you stay here, or will you walk with me?" Tears welled in her eyes, rolling down her dirt-streaked cheeks. She could not look at him. She wanted to answer, but her voice refused to come. The choice was too heavy. To final. The silence stretched, broken only by the wind that whispered through the empty street. For a long moment she sat frozen, her hands shaking, her breath trembling. Then, slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes met his, and for the first time in her life she saw no cruelty, no mockery, no false promise. She saw truth. She saw strength. She saw someone who meant every word. Her lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. I want to live." The human's eyes softened, and for the first time, she thought she saw pride in them. He rose to his feet and extended his hand again, steady and sure. "Then take my hand and come with me." Her heart thundered. She stared at his hand, the same hand that had fed her, shielded her, lifted her from the dirt. Fear tried to hold her back, but hope pushed her forward. Her fingers trembled as they reached out. She placed her hand in his. The moment their hands joined, something inside her broke free. The chains of shame, of fear, of despair. They fell away like dust. She rose to her feet, her body weak, but her spirit alive. The human pulled her gently closer, his voice steady. "From this day, you are not alone. From this day, you walk with me." Her tears flowed freely, but they were not only tears of sorrow. They carried relief, gratitude, and something she could not name. She had been treated like dirt, laughed at, starved, forgotten. But now, a human had given her something no one else ever had: a choice and a future. The street that once echoed with laughter now lay silent, abandoned by the cruel. Only the stars bore witness as the girl who had been left to die stepped forward into a new life as they walked away together. Her head lowered against his shoulder, she whispered softly, "Thank you." The human did not answer with words. His hand tightened gently around hers, and his silence spoke louder than any promise. The night carried them onward, one fragile step after another, but no step was taken alone. The girl who once starved in the dust now had a place to belong. The human who had seen her suffering had given her more than food, more than shelter. He had given her strength, dignity, and life. And with his invitation, she stepped into a future she had never dared to dream.